Hi, everybody. Welcome to a very rainy Saturday on Carnival of Randomness. Not that you would know because it'll be out Monday, as always. But we're here early, special thing, and we're very glad to have Patrick with us.
Hello.
So that means we're going to get into some Patrick-type stuff, of course. Yeah, not just music or everything, but we're very thrilled to have as a guest. He's made it to the studio finally, and he brought bagels and coffee, so he can come down anytime he wants. One of the stars of our D&D, and we've gotten lots of fan mail wanting 8x10s of him, is Frank in the studio. Hey, man, Frank.
Hey, how's it going? Frank Ashcraft here.
So there, you're down here, and
yeah,
we could, my friend Buck, actually, I was telling him about D&D a little. We were doing something on D&D. He said, dude, I remember when my brother played and they had the little figures.
Yep.
And the little, this is how, like, when you started out, both of you, was it like that before it grew up a little more, where they had, like, the little paper figures and the little...
I would like to point out that we used the figures in the game that we played.
He did. He had some nice painted figures.
Remember there was a little camera on them?
Oh, they did change it.
I mean, well,
he said it was like little, like the board. It must have been little, like, say this was when it started out. It was probably different, I guess.
So a lot of people got into Dungeons and Dragons and RPGs in general from Hero Quest. A lot of people know Hero Quest, which is a board game that's got little paper minis, or there's actual minis for it with like little treasures and stuff. But yeah, I can't really speak to when I started as a kid, because I didn't start until probably 6 years ago.
But how did you get into it? Like, both of you, how did you get into it?
So for me, getting into D&D and RPGs in general, you know, I was talking with a friend of mine. He kept telling me about how he was playing this D&D campaign, and he said how he was an elf that was able to shrink down to a very small size and jump through a keyhole.
Happened to me at the bug jar more than once late at night.
And I'm like, wow, you can do anything in this game? He's like, yeah, you just think up what you want to do. I'm like, how does that even work? It just blew my mind. And I didn't have anyone that knew how to play it, and a friend of mine wanted to get into it, and her brother happened to be a DM. So he came over, and we played once, and the first time I played, I was hooked.
Yeah. I mean, for me it was like when I was little, like back in the olden days, my brother and his friends started playing D&D, and I tried to horn in on it, and then the Satanic Panic happened, and I was kind of locked out for a little while by my freaked out parents, and then, you know, junior high, I was back doing it, and it's been my whole thing.
Who would ever think, like, between, like, Judas Priest, Ozzy, and D&D would have something in common?
Yeah. Well,
I had friends. See, my friends were actually very open-minded about concerts, so a lot of people were envious of me in school because I went to Catholic schools. My parents, like one of my best friend, Rob, he loved Ozzy, and I went to go see Diary of a Madman. His parents won't let him go because Ozzy worships the devil.
Ozzy worshipped coke.
So I said, well, you know, Ozzy was like, the concert was like literally, you know, Randy Rhoads died a couple weeks beforehand. It was the day before Easter, and I said, well, you're going to miss it because Ozzy's going to bite the head off a bunny for Easter.
Oh, man.
But I was like, I would be the one going to concerts in grade school because my parents like that, they didn't really care. My only thing is, my only comment my dad ever made about like music was he thought Rod Stewart wore pantyhose for some reason. I could never figure that one out. You know, but they just didn't care, you know, and they let me listen to, you know, anything I wanted to. So I think that opened, you know, I think it opens your mind too. Like, you're not afraid of stuff. But I have to dispel this one thing. I've heard this over and over again, and I don't like the stereotype, but I just heard it this week again, that it seems like for D&D, Mountain Dew is something to do with it. Because I had a friend, I had a friend who said his girlfriend's son, they were playing, he said all it was cans of Mountain Dew in the trash. Is there something like where beer, I suppose, is a football drink? You know,
I feel like whenever you have something that involves nerddom, you know, you got to have Cheetos and Doritos and Mountain Dew. I think that's
like the Doritos and Mountain Dew. I think because, you know, especially when you're a kid, when you're younger, when you're older, you run out of time. But it's like when you're a kid, you would get together as early as you could in the morning and you'd play. until you were forced to go home. So the Mountain Dew was basically just to keep you awake and alert and hyped up to play, and then everything else was just kind of sustenance.
You know what it sounds like?
I think that, if there's any science to it, that would be it.
There's an analogy there, too, I think, back in the day, like getting the first Atari. And the thing was, on Christmas, you would get up as early as possible and literally... Oh, yeah. And my parents, again, were good, and like my neighbor's parents, like when we didn't have school, they let us stay up. We'd be starting playing Space Invaders at like 7 in the morning. We'd have screeching headaches at 2 at night, still trying to play, saying, one more game.
Oh, yeah.
But also, you might not know, Frank, we can get into a little like advertising early. We do it at the end. But you, I think, would be very interested in what Patrick's doing now.
Oh, yeah,
if you want to talk about that a little.
What, my podcast?
Sitting in a chair here talking to us, but I mean, he's got a podcast.
I have a podcast. I plugged on here a few times. It's called Architects of Entropy. It's been going on about a year, almost a year and a half now. And we play D&D 5th edition, and with a bunch of my friends. I do a lot of like post-production music, sound effects, and fun stuff, and it's worth checking out. It's called, once again, Architects of Entropy, and that's
I think you would actually find it really interesting. But I think that's the other point too. I think we'll talk about music obviously too, but you're a creative type as we all are. I'm not. I can't do anything. That's why I do this and promote stuff. But I think it's just such a thing where you can make your own world up.
Yeah. I'm. D&D is not my only thing, obviously. And then obviously I keep going to RPGs, even in the realm of RPGs.
Well, talk about them, too.
D&D. I'm definitely a creative type, but I consider myself more a jack of all trades. I like to do a lot of things.
Sounds like me.
Everything.
That sounds like me.
I don't ever get good at it, but I try.
Except for that's me. Like I always say, it's like, what is it? The jack of all trades, master of none. Right. I dabble in everything. It's like before I dropped dead this year. I was going to go do goat yoga even.
Yeah.
My doctor told me I couldn't, though.
No,
just because at the time I wasn't healed, and like.
Wow.
But then one of them, like Adriana, actually said, I told her I don't know if I want goats crawling all over me. I'm like, dude, for me that would have been one of my fantasies a long time ago.
Okay.
But no, I like to try new things. I remember like in high school, it's like some friends play splat ball. I'll go play splat ball.
Yeah, and I mean. Just an example this week. So Wednesday night, I've now started getting into the probably the most expensive RPG hobby. I started getting into Warhammer. I don't actually have any Warhammer figures. I'm playing online right now, so it's nice being able to not spend $1,000 to be able to play.
Yeah. What's the basic behind the game for like some people who don't know?
So Warhammer is a wargaming RPG. So it's not really an RPG. You're not role playing. What you're doing is you're building up armies that have certain points to them, and you try and get to a certain point level, and then you match up against someone, and you play on these big, grandiose maps that people build. They're, I think the standard size is like 44 inches by 60 inches, so it takes up like a dining room table.
Yeah.
And you have hundreds of units out on the table, and you're going through and strategizing, okay, I'm going to move these guys here, these guys are going to attack here. It's not the role playing that you get in D&D where you're playing a character or any of that. It's more just a battle that you go into.
And that's like kind of what D&D really grew out of, was back in like the early 70s. There were these, there was these like tabletop war games where people have miniatures and move them around, and then the guys who created D&D made a series of like, they originally were just like skirmish rules, or just like, if you wanted to have a couple guys fight each other, and then it kind of grew. But,
it was Gary Gygax. The original
Dave Aronson. Yeah.
The original game was called Chainmail.
Yeah.
And they were doing these big war battles, just like Warhammer. And they wanted to see what it would be like if they played one of the characters, and then they started adding some more rules on it. What if they were spellcasters and they created the classes? And then they're like, what if they were actually talking? And then Gary Gygax went and started creating all this world, and then D&D was birthed out of it.
If that's if there's not a metal band name that out there, that has to be. Doesn't it sound like it? Yeah. But I remember the first time I was exposed to D&D actually was in television. Had a game, but then you have to understand on this was really simplistic. You'd be going through tunnels, little dragon that looked like a seahorse would chase you. There wasn't really much, but they had like Zork actually, which was on Odyssey. I used to play Zork, and that was like the closest because you could come up like you had the 4 characters. You could build your own mazes, like sort of work with people.
So was the Zork? Was that still text-based on?
That was text-based. Yeah, actually, I was thinking there was one on Odyssey also, too. It was like, but I goofed that up. There was one on Odyssey. There was another Magnavox thing. Mm-hmm. But Zork was the text-based. I used to love the scroll games.
Yeah.
And I do Zork Beyond Zork, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And I like the creativity because sometimes it would just be hilarious because you would sit there, how come I can't get it? And all you had to do was get out of bed.
Like it was always, look up, or whatever. Just like.
But I used to love the text-based games, and I don't know if people did. I think we think more visually today. I don't know if people would really dig them or not.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, there's a resurgence of everything 70s and 80s now, so I'm sure that somebody has come out with it, and I'm sure there will
be.
There's
blast from the past, so COVID hits.
Right.
So we're all locked down. So I'm like, what the heck? I got a classic Atari for like $20, and I'm looking at the graphics going, man, this was stated as these suck.
Well, yeah, I mean...
and everything like that. But one of the things I like, this is like sort of like, okay, you can take everything too far. One of my friends got addicted to Warcraft, and he got to the point where I would call him to go, and he's like, dude, I'm in a major battle. And he actually went for Indian food, a bunch of us. He got caught speeding on the way home because he couldn't wait to get home to play.
We got to raid, man. We got to go.
Yeah. I had friends in college that were Warcraft heads, and they were like my best friends. And they wound up reclusing to their rooms, and they were playing Warcraft all the time, to the point that this was in college. One of my friends had to go and take an exam, and he's like, we have a raid tonight. I need you to come in. I need you to go and do this. And he's showing me what I have to do. I'm like, all right, I'll do it.
But we did have the moment.
You click here, and then you click here. And then if you see this, you click here and you click here. I'm like, this is what you do for hours and hours?
We had the one, it hit my friend, though. He even said he had a problem. And I think, obviously, it's a healthy hobby. It's fun. Everybody, sometimes we take it too far. But he said it really got to him where, okay, he's like in his mid-30s. He's playing. He goes, he's playing, got somebody's playing online with. And he said, I had to stop because... the person I was playing with said, well, my mom's calling me. It's time for dinner.
Well, yeah.
He had that part, though. But I think that's also the diversity of these things. Like, sometimes we'll have my friends Fred and the Goose on again. They do Zooms. And they do a lot of the war gaming. And actually, my friend's a professor. They do it in class, all the war games and stuff. And there's so much out there. I remember, like, in the day, like, there was the one, starts with an A, it was like all the board games, and there's so much. And I think
Avalon Hill.
Yeah, Avalon Hill, exactly. Like, I call it Cthulhu, which was funny. My mom tried to get me for Christmas. My dad was saying, I don't know what you want to get for Christmas. You should have heard your mother on the phone. CTH. But I think there's a fun thing, and there's like a communal thing to it, too, with everybody. We had a game that was some friends, and we ended up being there till 4 a.m. You didn't even think, because it's just fun. You get into it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't play video games. I hadn't played them for close to 10 years. I was just, as I said, I like to go and dabble into everything.
Yeah.
And when COVID hit, I couldn't go do anything. So I did projects around the house for a little bit, but that got boring after a while. And finally, I bit the bullet. I got a gaming laptop, and I got on and started playing, and then I was able to actually converse with people and socialize. Yes, it was through the internet, but I couldn't do it in person.
I mean, this is a game of a dragon. But the thing is, too, there's so many of these, and I think everybody, like, if you were having somebody who was interested in doing this, and we tried to introduce people to it in our videos, which are very popular, over 100 views and everything, they're like, who's that dude with the hat with the accent? And everything. And me, like, with my contacts where I can read with my glasses, like, what the hell does this say? No, we actually had, like, over 100 views. I had some dude looking at me during a concert at the Little. I'm like, oh, what did I do now? It's like in my old days at the bars. He's like, wait a second. You're that guy who wore the funny hat on that D&D thing.
Yeah.
You know, but I think if you have people who are interested, you could say, okay, what do you like? What sort of do you like to do? You could probably pick a game for them.
Yeah.
Because there's so many.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost overload. I mean, I feel like with everything, with the advent of the internet, there's so much out there that, you know, it breeds a lot of creativity, but also it causes a lot of that watered down effect.
Yeah, my view, it's good and bad because, like, pretty much anybody can do a show like this. So you just try to make it, you want people seem to enjoy it, people do it. But the thing is, there's so much, and I've always said this with musicians, too, is you can get your stuff out there, but people have to wade through so much.
Yeah, it's tough, especially in the podcast sphere. You know, you struggle to break out of, you know, just your friends listening to your podcast, you know.
Get famous people from Nashville on it helps.
Yeah.
It really helps.
What's so funny is that the whole name podcast came back from when people started doing it and record something, you download it on your iPod. And you listen
I think of Okra. That's the one thing I think of, like Okra, like the Okra pods and everything. But that's like technology, and I remember, like, you can get the stuff out there.
Yeah.
Everything else, you could find other people who do this. But I think still also there's that thing about still playing board games where you're all together actually and you're socializing and doing something instead of like the isolation.
That was the toughest thing for me was I'm in several regular games that meet in person, and for, you know, a year and a half we were doing it all online. It just wasn't it's fine, but it's not the same.
And I'll give you that, but I will say there is a place for it too. So I play online with my friends, and it's because one friend's in Austin, one friend's in Long Island, one friend's in Queens, and we're able to play D&D. We've been playing every Thursday for, I think we just hit session 290 or something like that.
Nice.
And it's cool because that whole group of friends also likes to rotate who's doing the DMing or game mastering. And that's where I get a lot of my RPG experiences, because it's like, hey guys, I got this new system, Savage Worlds, let's try that. Or hey, I got this new system, Morkborg, let's try that. So it's cool being able to do that, and then also still be able to play in person, because it's tough. Not only is it hard because of COVID and distance, but I mean, for anyone that's listening that's tried to play a D&D game, at some point scheduling is the hardest part about
that's the number one issue you have.
It's like when we've done ours, we've managed to find a date that works for everybody, and I think
but that's once every 3 months.
That's why we've done 2 in the last 3 years.
Then COVID killed the third one till 2022.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think also with collaboration,
somebody had a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we have you have your Bob Dylans, your Richie Blackmores, your people who can't work. I think when you collaborate, you also are rewarded by that because somebody can make it better. You might have an idea to play, but then somebody goes, "Why don't we try this?" And it's cool, and you go this direction. Everything else. But what were like when you came up with your first characters? What were they sort of like? And was it like?
So my first character, I was super deep, hot off the heels of finishing the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. For anyone that hasn't
I like
read
The
it,
Wizard in the Glass is my favorite still.
Yeah, that's
my
one of my favorite books, and that's kind of where I based it off of. So it was Roland, but it was more Roland in the old times. So the Stephen King Dark Tower series, for those who don't know,
I have also what it was Eye of the Dragon, which it sort of came from. That was which
is
a
Eye
really
of the Dragon
good.
is a side story because all of Stephen
Flag's
King's
in there though too,
right?
Isn't he?
But so Stephen King has this whole universe where there's multiple. I'm blanking on the word right now.
Multiverse?
Multiverse, you could say. And all of his books intertwine and cross
the Castle Rock stuff and everything, obviously.
To the point that, it gets even meta in the Dark Tower. Stephen King becomes his own character. So
I heard the movie. Now, I can't judge it because I didn't see it, but I heard that movie sucked.
The movie was awful.
Too bad because two good actors.
Yeah, there's rumors that they're going to do a TV series.
Yeah,
and they've been talking about it for a while, and it was going to be Idris Elba is going to be Roland, and it's going to be all like a HBO television series where they're going to go through and do it all based on the old time.
That's
when
the
Roland
best
was
way
a
to
kid.
do like a book series. We found
you can't. How can you do a movie of that? Really, you have to do a series. I just love in Suicide Squad when he finally. I love in Suicide Squad when he finally pets the rat. I just like that scene. It's like finally, nice rat. But we have, and I didn't have much of a problem thinking of my character. I don't know why.
I don't know.
But you have something really big to talk about in terms of games, that little book you brought that I think all you metal people will like. Because some people are going, how are these cool guys who do music playing nerd games? Well, guess what?
Yeah, well, so I listen to a lot of podcasts, which is, weird. I'm on a podcast. But a lot of the podcasts I listen to everything under the sun. But I listen to a lot of RPG podcasts, and one I listen to is Tabletop Twats, and it's not in the bad derogatory way. They are English folk, which is,
when I did the door at the Old Toad, some of the stuff they said, and I took me aback because like a few words I wouldn't say, and I just realized it was.
But they turned me on to this one, Morkborg, which is really based on like metal and doom and stoner. It even says in the beginning, music that helped, and it's got bands like Beelzebong and Bell Witch and Bongzilla and
I have the picture disc of Bongzilla. I have the pink picture disc of the Bongzilla.
So it's very, very metal, very dark, and there's a lot of really cool art imagery on it, and it's. I was talking with Patrick ahead of time, and it's interesting. So the way they do how you do damage for each of the weapons, there's one particular page where a guy is just immolated with all sorts of weapons. And next to each of the weapons in him, it says what dice it is and what it is. So like staff is D4, and the guy is just like impaled with it. Or
it's like a medieval wood cutting of a guy with 1,000,000 weapons just jammed into him.
Right. So it's a very metal thing, and it's got its own
and it's very silly too in its own way, and it really kind of gross.
So do they have like the big villain would be like a John Denver character who does easy listening and everybody covers their ears?
So even though it's music inspired, it is more that universe of stoner and doom, not so much based in music. But you could, I mean, that's a cool thing with RPGs. Yeah. You could create whatever you wanted. You could have John Denver character be the evil guy.
Yeah, and I was just gonna, you could have like the Jucifer character where I have to cover my ears. That's the loudest show I've ever seen in my life.
You could give you an example of some of the stuff that characters like. There's you roll everything randomly, and you may find it's like, for example, you may have a character that where is it? It's the Gutterborn Scum. For example, you roll randomly on the chart to see what your special ability is, and it's one called Abominable Goblobber. Your phlegm is vicious, lumpy, vile, and ballistically accurate at short range. So basically, you can just hack loogies at people and hurt them.
It's a Tommy Francis one right there for his character.
Yeah, it's really fun, and you can play it in like 5 minutes. The rules are basically like nothing.
I think that's the thing. It's like at your Christmas party when we did the Lovecraft game. It's like it was based like sort of like Yahtzee, but you get it pretty. Because I think some people get that. I think people sometimes are intimidated because they go in thinking I'm going to feel like an idiot because I'm not going to be able to do the rules and everything else.
Yeah, I will say. I mean, that's a huge thing that's really improved is board games. A lot of these indie board games, which I don't even know, it's like indie music. You can't really call it indie. It still has the title indie, but it's not really indie anymore. It's only indie in that it's independently published, but now it's become a genre in its own.
Yeah.
But board games have become very unique, and some of them can be so crazy advanced that it takes you hours to learn, and some of them are just really easy to pick up. And
some take 10 hours to play.
Right, and that's what's great about this book. It's a very small hardcover book, and their whole idea was you could sit down and get a game going very quickly. I had mentioned Savage Worlds before too.
Yeah.
Their whole moniker is Fast, Furious, Fun. So the idea is the DM can just improv on the fly and be able to create characters and worlds, and you don't have to go digging through the rules a lot. It really simplifies.
That was always like, I actually in high school I had a friend who was a DM. He used to say, okay, it depends on the DM, the way, because you're telling the story, you got to make it interesting. And I think that's a big appeal. My really good friend Caitlin said, like, it's like some of the novels she likes to be drawn into your own world. And I think that's a big appeal of it. But you get to be the characters too and stuff, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which which is kind of like we're going to jump back and forth. But again, now you're also, on the other side, a music person.
Yes,
Shock of Shocks.
yes.
And I remember you saying at Caverly's one time to me, he's like, oh, everybody knows you. But we were actually telling some Mcallister stories a little bit, because I don't want to forget to tell them before we talk about your stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's crazy. I was thinking of things I could talk about coming in here, and one thing that is really
your favorite candy bar.
Yeah, my favorite candy bar. I don't even know. It's funny enough. I think it's become a Milky Way. It used to be Snickers, and I think I've moved in the Milky Way realm. But
now we're going to get so many. Okay, the studio is going to be inundated with Milky Ways. You go do part 3. This is from Frank.
But yeah. So I'm a huge Rochester fan. I have my own version of the flower tattooed on my back. I love Rochester, and I'm very proud of it. And what's being great about being part of the music scene is just watching all these bands that are really starting to come up and get big. There was obviously back in the day Sirens and Sailors, and Mastodon is an offshoot of Rochester-based bands. And Sulaco's even had some of their own fame, being featured in some movies. And
Duke Jupiter back in the day,
some stuff. Yeah, and there's been a lot of people that have really come up, at least in the rock scene, and it's really cool recently seeing just this influx of bands that are getting big. Maybird's been putting out a lot of good albums and getting a lot of traction.
Of course, Sam. I just picked up his latest album, and I would always say, "Sam, you're getting like." He's like so humble. He's like, "Oh, don't say that."
But Maybird got picked up by Danger Mouse to produce one of their albums, and then right after that, they were picked up.
They were on iZombie. I guess Josh told me they had a track on iZombie.
Oh, okay. I didn't even know
Yeah, and he
that.
told me that because I'm like talking to him about, he's got to come on here sometime. Those guys are scheduled. But he's like, yeah. But I was like, oh, yeah, we just had a track on iZombie. I'm like, dude, I watched that show. And I think they had one on The Man on High Castle, too.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Which I've never seen, so I can't.
Yeah, I haven't seen that either. But yeah, it's great seeing them get up and big. And then, Michaela Davis has really been getting big. My two favorite bands, which is a very wide split of genres, are 9 Inch Nails and Grateful Dead. So a very wide
close.
spectrum.
I could see that because you have to smoke the weed for the Dead to listen to 9 Inch Nails.
So I think I've really delved into why is it that I like that, because some of my other favorite bands are like Radiohead. I'm a big fan of Pink Floyd, Black Moth, Super Rainbow. And I think really what it is the emotive music that's kind of got a feeling to it, and it's more ethereal, more beyond the music itself.
You would actually we've had them on the Archive Ravens too. I saw them, I saw Eva and Tom recently, and they're the kind of music you start when you see them. At first you're like, I don't know if I like. They suck you right in. They'll do classical jazz. They'll do this ethereal Pink Floyd type stuff, and you just get sucked in by the end, and you're like, wow, they're really good.
Yeah, and with that, being able to see Michaela is now touring or was touring with Wolf Bros, which is Bob Weir, who's the guitarist from the Grateful Dead, not Jerry, obviously, but.
That would be kind of tough.
So she was playing with them, and it's funny. A lot of my friends who are big into Grateful Dead are talking about this harp player that played with Bob Weir, and I'm like, I know her. She's from Rochester.
Isn't that the point? I was like, she's a friend of mine. But you can Google her, and you can see. I know there's probably tons of them, but there's one in Syracuse where she's on stage with Bob Weir.
Yeah.
And I went to one of her Dead shows, and okay, I'm a little, not as much,
right.
But when the first song was 28 minutes, you're smelling patchouli, and you're going, okay. But yeah, you find out, because I remember when she started out, it's just, I love seeing that from friends of mine and everybody, and I'm waiting for you to do on your stadium tour.
Right. So I will say my latest band, or I guess I have a lot of latest bands, but the bands that I'm in right now, one of them, The Living Room, we actually recorded an EP and put it out there. And we put it on, I can't remember what platform we put it on, but it shows you where people are playing your music. And for some reason, we got really big in Central America and South America. So we had a lot of plays in Brazil, Argentina, Ecuador, and I have no idea why.
It's like this. It's like
Frank's going south of the border.
I got people in Canada listening to this.
Yeah.
You wonder how they find it.
Right. It's odd. A lot of it going all the way back to watered down internet. It's really hard to wade through the muck and mire to actually A, get your music out there, or B, find music. So it is interesting to see us getting picked up from there. You know, it might have to do with the platform we posted on, might do some ads here and there or something, who knows. But you know,
in the algorithm, man, who knows?
This is the story I've heard too. I've had friends, like a friend of mine lives in Atlanta, and you think Atlanta, okay, could be big. He would say, Rob, you know, you could probably go out, ask somebody, okay, what kind of music you like? Pre-COVID, obviously, any night you could find it. It's like, I can't do that here.
Yeah.
Bill Kirchen said that about the High Risers. That's where they came up with the Trout Mouse or whatever the song, because he said, you know, you don't get bands like this everywhere.
Yeah.
Somehow we have this weird little music community where we sort of all interlap, but there's so much good stuff out there.
Yeah, and that is one thing that, you know, I've seen. Of course, there's always an article in some paper somewhere that says top 10 cities that have X, Y, or Z. You know, for Rochester, I've seen the one that's like the highest music rate per capita, or highest bands per capita. But yeah, it's definitely cool. You know, we all play in a lot of different bands, and there's all these bands that are all part of the same orbit. But then there's also whole other sects that are going on, you know, their own orbits too. So there's a lot of bands. Someone's like, oh, I'm in this band. I'm like, how have I never heard of you guys? Well, it's because there's so much music in Rochester that you can afford to go and find all these different venues and different genres to go in and, you know, fit your fancy.
So. Then the COVID hit and everything, and how did that affect you? Did you go in terms of, because for me, I was saying this is going to be my creative period. By the third week, I was like, do I have to do my laundry? You know, the ennui starts getting you, and you're like, okay, I can barely. Where's the remote control? I can't get up to change the television.
So for me, I was like, all right, I got all this time. I actually started teaching myself piano and keyboards and organ and stuff about 2 years ago with the other bands that I'm in. And I'm like, all right, I got all this time now. I can finally focus. I'm going to go and I'm going to get really good at playing. And then I got a gaming laptop and started playing video games.
There you go. Everybody was going to make their masterpiece, and then they're like, oh,
I got to give Sean something. Like Sean McVeigh from I think he wrote like 3 or 4 albums.
Yeah. Who did?
I think Sean McVeigh did. I think he told me on here.
Yeah, they put out, I think they just put out the 3rd of their 3 albums, or maybe the 2nd. But yeah, they've been in a huge writing thing. They're one, so King Buffalo, it's crazy. Back in the day, seeing Red Hot Mess, and which, you know, spawned into, I guess it wasn't Red Hot Mess.
Well, that was from was it from a little bit? I think you got Velvet, Elvis, and Red Hot Mess. It was some members from the UV Rays, wasn't it?
It was Man vs. Moon, and then Man vs. Moon turned into Abandoned Buildings Club. And Abandoned Buildings Club was a 2-drummer set. So they had Nick Pryor was always the staple drummer, and then they had rotating drummers coming through. And then they had Sean McVeigh and Dan Reynolds. Sean McVeigh and Dan Reynolds went on to do King Buffalo. But Abandoned Buildings Club and Velvet Elvis back in the day had this joking rivalry where, you know, they would always kind of steal each other's, you know, poke fun at each other. So Abandoned Buildings Club, they had a drum head made for Nick Pryor's drum, which was a unicorn in a bomber jacket. And it was more to make fun of, now I just blanked on the name. We just said Velvet Elvis, because their whole theme was you know, a unicorn. So that was fun. And then when Velvet Elvis kind of broke up, Abandoned Buildings Club, those 2 guys went over and hooked up with Scotty, and then King Buffalo was born. And they've really been getting big. It's crazy, you know, watching them play a lot of European tour dates.
That's the thing. They got their whole. When Sean was on the show, he said that, you know, their whole tour. They would be. That's why they would play the Thanksgiving Eve show. They'd be gone all year in Europe.
Yeah,
the COVID got them. But their music. We've played them on here. We've had Sean on here, and I think I almost said it's like a mix of Black Sabbath and Pink Floyd.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely that, as we were talking about, the ethereal themes. And, Yeah, and it's they do a really good thing. Back, I talked with Sean way long ago. He's like, I can't ever tell if people like my music because they're so quiet at the end of our songs. And I'm like, you put them into a trance, man. It's pretty hard to snap out of a trance and start, going nuts.
People love them. Like I read, like the last show on Thanksgiving, which is a couple years ago. I remember, like I just bought their CD, and like Ryan Hurley and Alicia were there, and Ryan's musician in enough bands, obviously. And he said, "This is the best album I've ever heard."
Yeah. And they I'll give it to them too. They're evolving and they're changing their music style as they go through, and it's interesting watching it and watching them go on tour. They were on a bill across the country touring with Clutch and Stoner. Stoner is an offshoot of Caius, which had like Brant Bjork and some of the other guys from that, and it's really interesting seeing them get big as well. But going back to Velvet Elvis, so when Velvet Elvis split and King Buffalo was formed, some of those folks went and started forming other bands. And at the time, Eric Wachowski, Darren DeWispler, and myself had started our own sort of thing. It became Jan the Actress. And Eric was friends with Kara Teague, who was from Velvet Elvis, and asked her if she'd like to join us. And she came and joined us, and Jan the Actress really kind of took off from that point. And we were,
we played your stuff on here.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody sued us. Everybody was okay.
Yeah. Let me go talk to my lawyers real quick. No. But it was great. That whole thing was great. And, one of the things that we really liked about playing together, and we commented on it frequently, was the band is very open. Everyone's really willing to listen to each other and to provide criticisms and feedback and grow, and everyone has a voice in the band. And Eric and I kind of took that forward towards the end when Jan the Actress was starting to fall apart a little bit. We brought on Jay Moon, and Jay Moon was playing drums for us, and Jay Moon, Eric, and I went on and started playing in other bands, and then we got Justin Polini, who currently plays in Green Dreams and
I saw them actually at Brununzio.
Yeah.
But I also saw them at a Small World Books, which is like a favorite venue. It's like, I love it. It's like this underground club. It's the only place I think Shane McCarthy's band, Honeymoon Phase, ever played. So I was telling Michaela about the stalker I had, the cosplay Harley Quinn person who stalked me for a while. And she was like, "Ooh," and I'm like, "No, I don't want to get murdered." One of my friends told me if it was Daenerys, I'd be like chopped up and buried in the woods right now. But I love that because it was like this neat little underground, and you'd have all these different bands and stuff. I like that underground.
I assume Small World Books is still around.
I am hoping. I know Katie Preston, Katie Morey now. I don't know if she's still affiliated with it, but I hope those, because obviously there's a lot of casualties of COVID, and what can you do? You feel you try to support as much as you can, but also we've never been in. How many people said when this started, we've been through this before, it'll be over by April, April 2025 maybe. And then you hear, oh, it's done, oh, it's back.
Yep, we'll see. We'll see. It could wind up being the next flu, and if that's the case, I think there's going to be permanent changes, because the flu is seasonal at least, and COVID unfortunately runs year round. So, the question is, do you always limit capacity? Do you always have mask mandates? Do you always have vaccinations? And at some point, if it continues just circling and mutating, we're going to have to figure out how to live with it.
And I think also people, like, you get the Looney cartoon crowd. Let's forget about them. They're a small percent. I think when you have, like, I hate the word, but I'll use it, like a new normal, it takes people a while to adapt, but then they become, like, I see people driving with their masks on in cars. People get to it.
Well, it's funny. I'm sure everyone's thought of it. Going in somewhere, you see people with a mask, you see people without a mask. Back before COVID hit, you saw someone with a mask, you'd be like, that person's weird, or something's going on.
Or they got allergy issues, big allergy issues.
Yeah.
I'm like more dude, like I go to the store, like, oh, beautiful, you're wearing a mask. Maybe not on the chin, maybe over the nose would help. I'm looking for somebody to wear it over their eyes and like bounce into stuff. It's like, it's not an art form, you just have to put it over here.
Well, you go to certain, like, I spent a lot of the day earlier this week down in like Fairport, Perrington, Pittsford area, and I was going in and out of places. I did not see a mask on a human being behind the counter, in front of the counter.
They're getting less when I've been in Wegmans lately.
I would not take my mask off anywhere near them.
There was a dude when I went to Wegmans a week ago, no mask, coughing all over. And I like the big beard. I'm like, get that. But how did you now? You said you only got into playing like 6 years ago or so. How did you start?
Yeah, so.
And what were some of your influences? You mentioned the band. You always liked the bands you've liked.
Right.
You one of those like all of us where if it's good music, it's good. Like the
exactly.
Hank Williams, the Slayer.
So I listened to everything under the sun. I used to follow this one blog that was called Orgasm, AUR, gasm. And
I did too when I was in high school a lot.
So
we had to get them from behind the counter, though. We couldn't just get them online.
So we would, I would go through and I'd see all these new bands, and I started getting into that and listening to that. And then, that kind of folded, and Spotify came around, and Spotify has this, Discover Weekly that it curates a list for you based on what you're listening to. So I'd find some bands through there, and then they have this release radar they put out, which is all the bands that are similar to what you listen to. It'll put out whenever they have new albums, new singles, whatever, it'll put it out. So that's how I keep up to date on my music. But yeah, to go to what you were saying, I listen to everything under the sun. If it's good, it's good. I like bluegrass, I like funk, I like blues, I like rock and roll, I like everything under the sun, right? Country, it's a little bit tough, but that's because pop and pop country are tough to get into, and pop country, in my opinion, isn't really country. There is some.
I'm more like the alt country, like the Jayhawks.
Right, exactly.
So I think from my friend Ellison, I've started to got more into the mainstream, but I'm really more like the alt stuff. Towns Van Zandt, the Jayhawks, Steve Earle.
There's some newer country stars though that are kind of like classic country, which are great too, like Sturgill Simpson. I really
Dead
like
Don't
Sturgill
Die. After the 100th time hearing the song, though, I want to listen to some of Hayes Carl. I'm a big fan of. You have to thank Danny of Abilene because he really brings in all the really.
Hayes Carl's great. I mean, she left me for Jesus.
That one about Live Free or Die, where the dude's arrested making license plates. It's like, why do I have to make one for New Hampshire when I'm in jail?
Bad liver and a broken heart. He does great. That all country stuff is great. But yeah, so I listened to all sorts of crazy music, and then I had been playing bass. I got a bass off a friend of mine in college. I had traded him for it, and I would mess around on it and learn songs and stuff. But playing bass is a little bit tough. I mean, you learn bass lines, but you really got to have something to play along with. It's not as harmonious and melodic as a guitar can be. So I picked up a friend in college who was a friend of mine, and we just started jamming around and playing. And he was a big Dead fan. So I remember, he's like, I'm going to go play an open mic. I want you to come play with me. I'm like, I don't know. And he convinced me to play one song with him, Fire on the Mountain by Grateful Dead. He's like, we're going to go play in the local bar on campus. And I'd seen him play there. There's like 10 people. I'm like, okay, this is fine. So I was super nervous day of. I go up, and it turns out it's senior night. We didn't know that. And it's in a big room, and there were 350 people there.
Whoops.
And I'm like sweating bullets, like getting out there, super nervous. I'd never played. The guy with sound is like up, down. I don't know what the hand signals are. I mistakenly told him to turn it up by nodding my head or something. And so that was my first foray into actually playing live. And then it kind of went to the wayside after college for a little bit as I was establishing my life and trying to get out of immense debt. And then a friend of mine was playing in a cover band and asked if I wanted to come and join. And I'm like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And I went and played with them, and I was terrible. And nothing ever came of it. And so they wound up folding that band, and two of the guys were supposed to go off and do acoustic. And then I didn't do anything for a while. And then it was when Abandoned Buildings Club folded. Nick Pryor wasn't playing with anyone. I said,
Planet Assassin? Did that start out?
That's where Planet Assassin started. So we started hanging out and just jamming drum and bass for a couple months. And I really got my chops up by doing that. It was very odd not having anything else in there. We would just mess around for a while, drink some Jennies, and hang out. And then a friend of mine, Darren, who was in the cover band I was playing in, I asked him if he wanted to come up, and he started jamming. And then we had Randall Kuhn, who was from Velvet Elvis, come up and jam with us a couple times. We had Oz come up and play like synthesizer with us a couple times. We had rotating cast coming through there, and then another friend of mine. So I hung out at Acme all the time, and a guy there I knew had played in some other bands, Teenage Junkies he had played in, and we asked him, it was Josh Cook, we asked him if he wanted to come up and play. He said, you can sing, right? He's like, yeah. So he came up, and his singing was terrible. And I'm like, you play guitar, right? He's like, yeah. He came up the next week, he brought his guitar, and he had 2 songs, and they were right in the vein of the stuff we were playing.
You kept the mics away from him, just like no background vocals either.
So, not to say that we're any good singers at all. I'm terrible. And
I think you have to be adequate. I think you just have to be, as long as you're not like sound like you're strangling a cat, you're all right.
Right. And so Darren Johnson, who had played in Arugula, Clawboard, and Space Lord, he was in the band. Nick Pryor, who had been in Red Hot Mess, Man vs. Moon, Abandoned Buildings Club, and I think he was a member of the Dads for a second. He rotated through a lot of different bands, as drummers do in Rochester. And then Josh Cook and myself, and we formed Planet Assassin, which was kind of like stoner rock, stoner metal, but we also took a weird approach to it. We're like, all right, everybody wants us to play 4 times here, so we're going to play 3 1/4 times. Or the beat here is super fast, so we're going to go from like a blast beat down to a slow, dirgy beat. So it was kind of like prog rock, but in a really ham-fisted way.
That's what I love. I love looking for different things. But the thing is, the reason I keep looking at my watch is for some reason it says it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon now. So I got to fix this. That's why I'm looking at my watch. I'm like, what the heck is happening? It jumped like 4 hours. Good of a conversation. Yes. So, wow, this one's going to be, we're going to have to break this one up a little longer. But the question I want to ask both of you, one of the reasons I do this is maybe I'm okay at it, but I would have horrifying stage fright doing any. How when Patrick does acting, or someday again, we hope, after this stuff, and you do this, how did you eventually come, or what kind of mindset do you have when you're doing this in front of people to make sure, you can just do it when you're on the stage or you're playing music, how you can just overcome the idea you're playing in front of people, not to piss yourself or
So the first time I told you I was super nervous.
That's why I can't do it. That's why
I had to get over it by drinking a bottle of wine, and that didn't go over well.
I've seen many a band. The old story was whoever plays last at the bug jar, watch out, because by the time this was in the days before COVID, when the last show would be over around 2, the last band would be falling off the stage, everybody would be drunk. It's like that classic Christmas concert with the UV rays where Kevin Wilcox was like, anybody wants a CD, just buy me a shot.
Right.
Okay, the cops are outside. I'm like, Kevin, there's the cops. Oh, we got the law here? I'm like, yeah, it's going to be a good Christmas show.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Replacements.
Yeah. But yeah, so getting up on stage, it's just practice. You're really nervous the first few times, and then you actually get out there and you realize what it is. And it's fine. My first show I played with Planet Assassin, I was tucked back in the corner in Bug Jar, hiding in the dark, just stiff, staring at my fretboard. And then I started coming out. Anyone that's listening to this that knows me also knows that I'm still stiff as a board, but at least I'm a little bit more out front. But yeah, it just comes with a lot of practice. And I will say, the community that we're in, it's always the same people you see at shows, so it's almost like you're playing to friends. So it makes it a lot easier as well.
Yeah, I mean, for theater, it's it's also what Frank said. Practice is the most important thing in any art form that you're doing in front of people. Is once you're confident in what you're doing, that's really the key. You're going to be more afraid of what people think if you don't feel like you're up to the task, and also, lights help. Lights are great, because when lights are on you, you can't see the people. So there could be 4 people, there could be a million people. But, in terms of that, I'd say the number one thing is just when you're confident in your performance, then you want people to see it.
I would think, too, because, not more for, theater, but, some shows. You don't want to see the drunk dude in the corner. You're like, dude, look at that. You can't start laughing or whatever.
Yeah.
Something else. But I also think I've known like a lot of musicians or just known of, like I didn't know the Cramps, but I knew like my brother actually met them, and he said like off stage, Lux and Ivy were the most shy people who'd ever meet. Mm-hmm. So you're playing. A lot of people don't get they're playing a character up there a little.
Yeah.
And I suppose in a way you're yourself, but also maybe you're playing a little bit of like a character. You're like a musician.
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of ways people deal with it. I certainly am Frank on stage. I'm not playing a character, but
you're playing stiff up there with the bass.
I do know some people that do, follow that. I mean, if you look back one of Nick Pryor's other bands with Mike McGee and Jorge and Graham, they went and were. Man, why am I blanking on all these bands?
Because you're on a podcast now. That's why. We always do this. But I'll fill in for you. It's like, okay, Kevin Wilcox. The first time I ever saw him play, I'm like, this guy's either a total dick or he's cool. He's one of my best friends. But you saw him on stage. He's a wild man getting it showed up. And you're wondering, what is this guy like? And you find he's like one of the nicest guys in the world. But he's into the music.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, like for acting and stuff.
And it was Hot Mayonnaise that I was thinking of, which I'm sure you had seen Hot Mayonnaise back in the day. And they put on whole monikers. It was kind of that like glam, kind of like hard rock, punk, hard hitting, and they were definitely characters. They even had like character names. So when they were on stage, they were totally different than they were, off stage. So
that aspect does make it a lot easier.
Right.
I think too, in a way, some people like actually. I can go actually. An example is like some of the drag queens I've known, where if you met them, not doing that, but it's like almost like okay, I'm shy, but this is the way I can have my flamboyant, fun personality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You exercise a lot of stuff out doing that. Like you get like you get to it's like therapy.
So the big question: would you ever do a D&D themed band and have Patrick come out in a wizard hat and introduce you? Where you all play characters. Okay, here's the wooden dark elf playing drums.
So funny enough, probably not. But a D&D themed at least. I definitely have Patrick come out. But a D&D theme. Probably not, but I have thought I've been wanting to put together a spaghetti western band. I had wanted to do.
Oh, that would be! I would love that. Do some Ennio Morricone. It's his birthday,
and I'd want to do like a whole storyline where it's got different acts. The first bit is the intro, and then you have each of the characters' songs, and then you have the story, then you have everything building up to the big climax, and then the resolution. And I had wanted to do that for a long time, and then I was talking with someone about it. They're like, King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard already did that. I'm like, what? And then I went and found Eyes Across the Sky, and sure enough, they had already done that. So that was a little disheartening. I thought I had a unique idea. But
I'm actually thinking of Eddie Nebula's band, Dark Nemesis, which they did for a while. Dark Nemesis, where they were all invaders from space. Yep. They sort of tried to do like a war type thing.
Yep.
I remember that. But now, what are you come up with some fun names. What's your current projects?
So I have 3 projects right now. So
in Rochester, you're lame. What's going on?
Right, I know. I guess it's technically 4 because I'm trying to put together an acoustic thing too. But so one of them is spun off of Jan the Actress, which became Die Kitty Die. So Jay Moon, who we picked up towards the end, he's now playing guitar, and then Justin Polini, who I brought up, is playing drums. Eric Witkowski is playing guitar, vocals, writing most of the music. And I'm playing bass in that band. That's more of like a. It's always hard when you're asked like what your genre is, but it's rock and roll. It's got a little bit of punk vibes.
You're in what I always say. It's like I use the Mighty High and Die example. Like we've used Mcallister as an example. Say, okay, she's a harpist. It's all over the place. What I say for a lot of bands when I recommend them, I just go, I can't really say, but they're good music,
right?
Because you can't really, you get some people who are pigeonholed. Like the high risers. It's like rockabilly, 50s rock. But other people, they're all over. It's like how like King Buffalo, like we said. But I just say like for the Mighty High and Dry, they're really good music.
Yeah.
For all of you, like the things I've seen, like Jan the Actress, I'm like, it's music, it's rock and roll. Go see them.
The best way to do it is normally like compare it to other music. With Die Kitty Die, I feel like we're still trying to find our sound, so I can't really put my
but I'm a dick
it.
like that. Like if people ask me, I'll go, well, you like Taylor Swift?
Yeah.
Just say
hey,
something
I'll tell you what, Taylor Swift's later music has been kind of good. It's more folky.
I have a bond with her because I keep telling, I said this numerous times, we share a birth date. So I'm often mistaken for her. And I've actually, I've given up. I just do the selfies, I sign photos, but,
it's easier to be like, you know what, this is going to make this person
it makes the person happy. It's
right.
I won't say still who did it, but one time a certain radio station gave away a signed Bowie album when he was playing Syracuse. One of them signed it.
Of course.
But but can you imagine that person, you hope it's just, I'm a big fan, I'm going to keep this. Can you imagine them, I'm going to sell it, and but no, one of my things I try to push on this show is for the arts around the theater. Some people, and this is the thing I use with some of my friends, where I remember I went to go see Ellison when she opened for some band in Greece. I left before that. I tried to get my friends to go. They would say, I don't know the music. And then they tried to get me to go see an Eagles cover band. I go, why should I know the music?
Right.
And I think, go see things you don't know, because guess what? You might like them. You know what you like.
Yeah. Well, on the other side of that, so we have Die Kitty Die. One of my other bands is called Below Average White Band. So Below Average White Band is a spinoff of Planet Assassin. We kind of kept playing together, and what we do is B-side covers of bands so it's kind of interesting.
Cool.
A lot of people, unless they're big into music, they're not going to know a lot of the music. I don't even know some of the songs that we're picking, and we're doing covers, kind of making them our own. We're just having fun with it. It's interesting.
You said the word fun. It's actually Todd Kratz was telling me some shows he did, he would do some obscure Hank the Third.
Yeah.
And he would love it because people would come up to us saying, that's a really good song you wrote. But I always love that too, where when you talk to friends around here, we're in the club where you mentioned an obscure band they know.
Right.
Well, I remember one time I worked at Target over the holidays for some extra money, and they had the one guy there who's Mr. Music. And he's he knew everything, so he knew Tom Petty. So I said, did you hear Nick Lowe's new album? Who's Nick Lowe? But
right.
When I mention, I just take if I mention a Nick Lowe, it's assume we all know.
Right.
Yeah. So we have a little snobbiness going there.
So mine is, some of the covers we do. So we do Beach Boys, but we do a song called All I Want to Do. There's a song, All I Wanna Do, which is on Pet Sounds, I believe. But All I Want to Do is... it's post all that, and it's more, it's garage rock punk. It's very odd. And, if we played it, everyone would be like, that's the Beach Boys?
People don't get the Beach Boys a little bit, because I have a lot of the Wild Honey, Friends. I love Sunflower.
Yeah.
But you listen to these. This is when they got Blondie Chapman and Ricky Starr to play in, Surf's Up, and, okay, most people, they have all the big hits. There's a lot more to them.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more where you dig deep, the deep cuts that people have never heard. And you've got some blues, you got some garage.
Right. Yeah. And we do some other covers like Golden Earring. Everybody knows Radar Love. Some people know the song that we cover, which is Twilight Zone.
Yeah. You've entered the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
No, I don't think that's that song, is it?
You have entered the Twilight. This is a Madhouse coming home.
Oh, yeah.
Which was played on MTV in my time. That's the reason I know it.
But there's we do obscure covers. It's fun. Now we are starting to dabble into more well-known ones that we do kind of crazy. So we started covering John Denver, Country Roads, Take Me Home. Or Take Me Home, Country Roads. I can't remember what the
Country Roads. I just know it's because of the Kingsman sequel when it's Merlin's favorite song and that one seed in there.
But so we're doing that, and we're like, you know what? Let's try and play it a little bit faster. Let's try and play it a little bit heavier. Why don't we change the beat here? And then as we're going through there, someone's like, I feel like Me First and the Gimme Gimme.
I was just going to say,
it turns out we listened to it. It's pretty much what we came up with.
We were psychic there. We had a psychic mode because I literally was just thinking of that.
Yeah. So that's the type of fun stuff we have with that band. We played out once. We haven't played out with the full collection. We have Nick Iskazitis. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. And we have Rob Hickey. They've played in a couple bands here and there, I feel like, but not many. And then Darren Johnson, who was in Planet Assassin with me, and Nick Pryor. So we do all covers. I play keys in that band and organ and sound effects, all sorts of stuff.
We should do sometime. This would be like a couple-hour episode where we do like the tree of bands. And we do, okay, this band begot this band, this band begot this band.
That's not a bad idea. You might be onto something.
For a while,
it was for Rochester bands.
The old joke used to be like with Rob Filardo, because Rob Filardo was literally, it's like you would like to make the joke, well, I went to a wedding and Rob was in the wedding band, because literally it was like every band.
It's the 6 degrees things. You got to figure out who has the most degrees.
Right.
In all of Rochester music.
Right.
Then for a while, Sam Snyder was producing everything and every band doing this.
Yep.
You just get the couple, like John Eric Payton, who's one of our guest panel hosts a lot. He's the rare bird. He just sticks to his one. And I said, dude, it's like I told him the other day, I'm like, yeah, I multitask. Look what happened to me. So maybe not.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean it's everybody's intermingled. It's great. And then the last intermingled band we have that I'm in is the Living Room. So Living Room is a 7-piece. It's got you mentioned Kevin Wilcox. His brother Greg Wilcox is on bass. Greg used to play with Eric Wachowski in Pink Elephant. And
I have their CD.
Yeah, you have all the CDs.
I do. Actually, I should do that on. Well, we do play them on here though. But I always say buy something, especially the merch, like the shirts, because the bands get them all.
Right.
And a lot of people that's what Sean said to me. It's like, okay, you get all the. Well, come up with some. So I've got like a huge collection of these. That's like actually a quick story. I was walking in the woods with my dog one day, and another dog comes up to me, and I'm like spaced out, looking at the ground. Somebody comes by me. They got a Velvet Elvis shirt on. I'm like, I know that band. Then he looks at me. He's like, I think I've seen you. Look at Ryan and Alicia. Because, the recognition. Right, you're like, wait a second. Because who would you think, you see, that's what I love. Like, if you walk around, who's going to know what that is? Then you have the one person, look at.
Yep. So, yeah, and then also in the Living Room, we also have Amber Mcallister, who used to be in Lobster Quadrille back in the day.
I don't know when they finally ended, but I remember seeing them the last time at Lux.
Yeah.
And they were a fun band because you couldn't really... I would say they were a little like theater, like Baroque.
Yeah. Yep. And Nia Shea, who hasn't played at least live...
Well, she said I think she also went the Babydom route like somebody else.
The Babydom?
I think she had a kid.
Oh, no. Nia doesn't have any children.
Somebody did. Well, I look at Facebook, somebody did.
I went the baby route.
Yeah.
But
confusing or somebody else. Sorry to you.
Yeah, you're fine. Nia's doing vocals, and then we have on drums Jay Moon. So Jay Moon plays in that band as well. And then we have Peter Mantello, who he played. I'm trying to remember. He used to play in a band with Joe Cartella. I can't think. Oh man!
No, that's like Nia is a big Nick Cave fan, obviously too, because we both went to Philly to see him.
Yeah,
she always likes my post when I put Nick Cave stuff up.
Yeah, so that band, is Eric Wachowski and myself, and it's funny you bring up Nick Cave because that's very much kind of the style we are. It's like Nick Cave, Mark Lanigan, kind of that down-tempo.
I love
kind of like
the stuff. Who's the female he's done some stuff with too? No, I won't put you on the spot because
my names are.
But I love that one, like the today. Circus Left Town. That's almost like a Tom Waits song, and those albums Mark Lanigan did with is whatever her name is, which is we couldn't play it anyways. They'd sue us, so it wouldn't matter.
Right.
So that's but I love his stuff, and that's.
So yeah, I mean, I'd really suggest if you're into that music, come out.
Come out anyways. You might just find something else you like, and then you'll go down like the rabbit hole, as I say, the good rabbit holes where you start getting into other music.
Yeah, and speaking of which, we actually have a show coming up. It's kind of
okay. Let's do some plugs.
It's kind of a DIY show that's going on. And so it's a Trash Wave review. So Eric Wachowski's putting it on. So we have the Comrades there. We have Marching Band Forms Pentagram. We have the Living Room. We have the Grinders. And then we have MK Ultra doing, DJing. And it's going to be hosted by Will Carroll. And then we also have comedy coming from Luke Thayers and Sherelle Kinder. And then Greg Wilcox, who's in the band, also does Tuvin, which is that throat singing. So he's going to be doing some throat singing there as well. So that's... Crazy. That's on November 20th at the Pavilion Lodge down in Ellison Park.
Which I've been to. Actually, one of my friends had it's actually a very nice venue for it. My friend Barrel Age had a show there. But it's been great. You made it to the studio.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I'm glad.
And we have some other plugs. We have like a very good band at Loving Cup this Friday, whose name I don't know, but it's like Joe Mercado, some guy named Andy Calabrese. Bunch of people who, and then
Andy guy.
Then Adrian's playing there on the 26th. Of course,
young and up and comer.
Plus, there's tons of stuff going on for things, but just be safe, okay, with COVID and everything, and everything. If you want to choose to go out, just be careful and everything. We don't want any
mask up.
But we're going to play a couple tunes that they know. You have anything besides your podcast coming up, Patrick? Zooms. We have some Zooms probably coming up.
We're going to record some more Zooms with Rob. Our podcast is going strong. We drop every other Monday. Our next episode will be live, I believe, the 15th. The week, the 22nd, which is my birthday. Find me on Facebook. Find them, around.
And we will have D&D Part 3 in next year because COVID whacked us.
Yeah,
we'll get the gang. But what do we have 2 songs this time because you're in so many bands.
Yeah. So one of them is Die Kitty Die, which we haven't recorded. We keep saying we're going to record. We're trying to book with
exclusive here. Yay!
So I think what we might actually do is go back to more sound in Syracuse because it's a whole event. You go there, you stay in the apartment above the studio, and it's just you get to focus on the music for the weekend. So we're talking about doing that for Die Kitty Die and finally getting something out there. But what I have here is, I apologize if this offends anyone, but the name of the song is Boners for Jesus. And it's
that's actually, you look at it's a positive. It means you're really
exactly.
You found religion. It's like it's like I think it's a very positive song actually.
So that's a live recording that we had from Bug Jar. And then the other song is off of our EP from the Living Room, and that song is called North. It's our single off of that album, and two very different styles of music. So give it a listen, and feel free to inundate these guys with all the
Where
feedback.
Can we find you too? Where can we you have like stalker book stuff?
Yeah, so we were talking about the internet, and it's really hard. We're terrible at marketing, but we have a Facebook page because we're old boomers. No, we're not boomers, but we are old. So Facebook, you can find us, The Living Room, and Die Kitty Die. And then The Living Room is also streaming. Our EP, which is called The Living Room, is streaming on all platforms. You can find it Apple Music, Spotify, all of that. Or if you want to go on Bandcamp, it is, oh man, I should have already known it. I think it's thelivingroom.bandcamp.com. I think it is thelivingroom.bandcamp.com. One last funny note on that. We got interviewed by Frank DeBlaze, and he did a whole spread on us in the Beacon. And he interviewed us and went through, and he reviewed the album. And the album he reviewed was another band called The Living Room. but the rest of the interview is correct, so it was interesting.
Would be great. Oh, he gave it glowing reviews. Yeah, that's us. It's like, but the best, that you win either way. Glowing reviews.
Right,
it's us.
Right.
He said if he panned it, it's those other guys.
So we did listen to the other guys, and they're okay. It's definitely different.
It'd be good, like if you were like if it was like polka or something.
Right. It's out. There's some interesting stuff.
But thanks a lot, man. Yeah. And come back, and you'll be in a day. And I have to be biased. You were the best guest ever. You brought coffee, so you're better than anybody. You had first serve.
Worth the wait.
I stood you guys up last time, so I figured I had to make it up. So.
Much appreciated.
By all means. But thanks a lot, man. Thanks, Patrick, and hope you had fun. And see you. Bye-bye.
Bye.